Hello, YouTubers, and welcome back to another episode of Buckshot Thursday here on the Ohio Patriot Education Network YouTube channel. I'm, as always, your host, AR, the Ohio Patriot, and for today's Buckshot Thursday, we will be doing a very special episode in remembrance for the 4th anniversary of the El Paso Walmart Massacre that took place 4 years ago today. This is a memorial stream for them, people that died that day, and we'll basically be doing a list of the reading of names of those who were lost in that tragic, preventable tragedy, just like many that happened in gun-free zones, which is what El Paso was, exactly what the Gilroy Garlic Festival that we talked about last Friday was, exactly what the Dayton Massacre that we'll be talking about tomorrow was. They were all gun-free zones. And, it's something that Bush Senior's administration put in place back in the early 90s, and it's something that moron Joe Biden helped pass and has never been rescinded, never been repealed, et cetera, et cetera. And when you look at where 97.8% of all massacres happen in this country, it's legitimately gun-free zones. So if you really wanted to stop things, you would just ban gun-free zones in this country and harden everywhere, basically, is what it is. Tell everybody to carry everywhere is what it is. And you can have a better overall country is what it would be then. So, yeah, we'll be doing a breakdown of the whole event that happened 4 years ago today, how it all went down, do a list of reading of names then. Just like with Gilroy last week, we'll be doing the Wikipedia for this. And then I had to look up some of the couple different articles for names and stuff like that because I'm not so sure that they put them in that original Wikipedia article. So I made sure to just get the list of people that were killed here so we can remember these 20. I think it's 22 is what I found on most of the list, but it was actually 23 that died, if I'm not mistaken, because there was I want to say there was 22 that initially were injured on top of the ones that were killed or whatever. And then one of those people ended up dying or something. That's what it was. Maybe it was 23 were injured originally, and then it was one of those died in the hospital or something like that. So I'm not sure exactly who that person is, but I'm gonna try to see if I can find it throughout this episode or whatever, and go from there. But anyway, so basically, 4 years ago today was a Saturday, and you basically had a bunch of people shopping at a Walmart there in Texas when a crazy motherfucker walked in and started shooting everybody. And you had a bunch of stuff happen since then, obviously. Various things have happened throughout the last 4 years there. Obviously, unlike California, Texas has now gone super pro 2A. They now have constitutional carry there. You now have a bunch of other stuff happening. Of course, you had Bloomberg and company use this tragedy to basically work with the Walton-heirs to take out all handgun ammunition as well as most rifle ammunition from Walmart stores, which is kind of a stupid play on their part because of the fact that all they did was cost themselves a ton of money and financials and stuff like that is what it is by not having people be able to shop for ammunition at their store and get what they need is what it was. So, yeah, it was a huge mistake on their part is what it is, dude. Legitimately. And it's just one of those things where it's again, it's just the wokeness is beyond belief, honestly, in many of these cases. Because it's the ammo did nothing to anyone, dude. It was the psychopathic nut job who most likely, if you look at the timeline between Gilroy, El Paso, and Dayton, very highly likelihood that all three of these were government done. PsyOps is what it is. So, anyway, we'll talk about that more, I think, tomorrow with Dayton. But anyway, so going to the overall Wikipedia here for the shooting itself, and we'll go through everything. Obviously, we're not going to mention the dickless piece of shit who was the perpetrator of this attack by name, because why would we give that fucker infamy? Of the three that were involved in these three massacres, he was the only piece of shit that survived. More recently, he was actually finally charged federally with, I think it was 22 or 23 counts of murder. So, and then a bunch of other stuff, which he should have died. He should have been given a death penalty a long fucking time ago, honestly, dude. He should, really honestly, the day he walked out of that store, the cops should just lit his ass up right then and there is what it is. Same thing with Top Supermarket more recently here. So, anyway. And, of course, they show him with his little ear pro on there with his rifle and stuff, which, if I'm not mistaken, he's an AK variant, if I believe is what it was. That's another thing I thought was very interesting, too, by the way. So you have, this is kind of the thing that makes sense between, Gilroy and El Paso both being kind of government psyop things, because you have both dudes using AK variants, and then the only difference was the guy in El Paso the guy in Dayton, who was Antifa and BLM affiliated, used an AR that he built himself, is what it was. So, Anyway, as I said here, it said August 3rd, 2019, a terrorist mass shooting occurred at a Walmart store in El Paso, Texas. United States gunman, then 21, not going to mention his name, killed 23 people and injured another 22. The FBI investigated the shooting as an act of domestic terrorism and a hate crime, because obviously a lot of people killed were actually foreign nationals. I think there was 8 or 9 of them from Mexico that were here either on visas or illegally is what it was. And you had, obviously, since then, Mexico has tried to sue America for wrongful deaths and stuff like that, and also tried to sue us for guns and everything else like that is what it is, even though, Operation Fast and Furious says hello. So, anyway, the shooting has been described as the deadliest attack on Latinos in modern American history. The perpetrator was arrested and charged with capital murder in connection with the shooting. He claimed to have posted a manifesto with so-called white nationalist and anti-immigrant themes in the image board of 8chan shortly before the attack. Manifesto cites Christchurch mosque shootings earlier that year and quote-unquote far-right conspiracy theory known as Great Replacement as inspiration for the attack. Which, if you notice, what's interesting to me about that one, so I love how they call it a conspiracy theory, because when you actually look at the whole Great Replacement thing, dude, it's like pretty sure it's not a theory when it's actually happening, number one. And then number two on that whole thing, it's not far right. It's literally, hey, this is what's happening. Just because it doesn't align with the globalist takeover and stuff like that doesn't mean it ain't happening, is what it is. So, but yeah, Christchurch is another one of those things that was all fucked up, and that is also kind of very much a psyop there as well. So, anyway, let's see where we're at now. Said February 8th, 2023, so this year, following an announcement by the Justice Department, would not seek death penalty. That piece of shit pled. Okay, so he did not seek death penalty for that piece of crap. Said pled guilty to 90 federal murder and hate crime charges. July 7, 2023, was sentenced to 90 consecutive life sentences, but is currently pending trial for state charges that would still possibly result in a death penalty under Texas state jurisdiction if found guilty. So basically what they're saying is he was found federally guilty, not getting death penalty. Texas could still hang this motherfucker if they wanted to, and they should, honestly. Let's be honest with ourselves, dude. Because Texas is one of the only states in this country, if not the only state in this country, you can still publicly hang someone for their death penalty. So, anyway. Going down further on this, said shooting occurred at a Walmart near the Saluya Vista Mall, I think that's how you pronounce it. I don't know. Some kind of Spanish phrase. On the east side of El Paso, the gunman walked into the store carrying what is believed to be a Wasser 10 rifle. Semi-automatic civilian version of the AKM and opened fire just before 10:40 a.m. So the store manager witnessed this piece of shit firing in the parking lot prior to entering this crowded store. So basically, we shot people in the parking lot and then walked in and started shooting other people. Is what it was then. Said store manager issued a quote code brown designating an active shooter to his employees, who began helping customers evacuate or hide. Many customers and employees fled to other stores in the adjacent mall and hid under tables and in shipping containers located behind the building. So here's my problem with all that stuff, right? And this is one thing that does bother me about the whole El Paso massacre there. You had at least one guy who was there who actually survived it, who admitted straight up that he had an active CCW, because obviously before Texas had constitutional carry, the guy had the right to keep and bear arms in this state under state law, in this country under state law there, and yet left his gun at home that day because he was just going to go to Walmart to do whatever then. Whereas if he had actually been able to be armed, he could have stopped this motherfucker in his tracks. Not to mention the fact that when you actually look at the gun shop, or the sporting goods department of most Walmarts that actually still have guns in them, and I think El Paso did at the time, had you had any manager actually have keys to some of the guns there, because they have obviously trigger locks on them and stuff like that, they could have easily gone over there, grabbed out some guns, popped the trigger locks off them real quick, grabbed some ammunition out of the fucking case, started loading up some shit, and engaged this motherfucker. And the same thing with customers as well in that one. You could have basically been handing out guns to customers to be a small posse to engage this asshole and, stop the fucking thing in his tracks is what it would be. But nobody did that stuff. Instead, they hid, they ran, from the gunfire. They hid, they cowered, and a lot of them were killed because of it. Instead of actually confronting this motherfucker head on with your own firearm and dealing with the threat as it stood there. So, anyway, yeah, there's a lot of bothersome stuff in that. Again, it goes back to them being gun-free zones and stuff like that, and not having employees be able to carry on the job and stuff. And it's just like, it's so infuriating because that's the thing. You notice all these tragedies have a pattern to them, and it's always a gun-free zone where they're going to get the biggest body count possible. It's never in an actual, I don't know, gun store, gun shop, gun range for that matter, for God's sakes, because they know they'd be killed on the fucking spot almost. So, anyway. Let's see, going back there though. Yeah, people were hiding in shipment containers, etc., etc. First responders began to arrive within 6 minutes of the initial 911 call. That's still a long time, though, dude. 6 minutes, and this guy's already, capping everybody is what it is that he sees, really. So, yeah, when, seconds matter, cops are literally at least 6 minutes away in that case. And even then, they still have to find where the guy is and, essentially either shoot him or take him into custody, whatever the case be there. So, anywho, it says El Paso Police Department, Texas Rangers and paramedics responded to the scene along with the FBI and ATF. It says after the shooting, the gunman drove to an intersection of Sunmont and Viscourt, where he identified himself as the shooter and surrendered to Texas Rangers and El Paso motorcycle officer. It says victims, the shooting has been described as the deadliest anti-Latino attack in recent U.S. history, resulting in 23 deaths and 22 injured. 20 of the victims were pronounced dead at the scene. One victim died the day after the event. Another victim died 2 days after. And a third 8 months after on April 26, 2020. So that was the last one that's why it said 22, because it was that person there that was the one that died 8 months after the fact. That seems like a long time. The only thing I could think is maybe they were in basically critical condition and in the ICU the entire time there. And they just happened to be on life support, maybe is what it was. And then their family was like, oh yeah, they're brain dead, so let's just take them off life support kind of thing or something, maybe. Because that would make sense there. And that's why we can only find 22 names then. So we'll do the 22 then we're actually being able to find then. So we'll do this here in a minute. Anyway, we're right now. Yeah, so among the dead were 13 Americans, 8 Mexicans, and 1 German. Names, ages, and citizenships of 22 of the dead were released by El Paso Police Department on August 5th. 17 of the people killed were 56 or older. 2 were in their 40s, 2 in their 20s. 1 was 36, and 1 was 15 years old. It says 13 victims were taken to the University Medical Center of El Paso, and another 11 to the Del Sol Medical Center. 2 children, aged 2 and 9, were transferred to El Paso Children's Hospital after their conditions were stabilized. The Del Sol Medical Center patients were between the ages of 35 and 82 years old. And it talks about the perpetrator and how he was 21 at the time, was arrested shortly after shooting and charged with capital murder, was considered a 21-year-old white male at the time. So was last known to have lived with his family in Allen, Texas, in the Fort Worth Metroplex, approximately 650 miles from El Paso. Graduated 2017, blah, blah, blah. Said legally purchased his Wasser 10 and 1,000 rounds of hollow point ammunition online on June 2019. Says during first interrogation, told detectives he targeted Mexicans according to an arrest warrant affidavit. Has been diagnosed as schizophrenic. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe it was this dude too, as well, for that matter, whose mother even said she did not want him owning a gun because she was pretty sure he was schizo. So again, this is a failure across the board right now, dude, because again, what do background checks do, man, when they're not stopping people who are clearly mentally ill from being able to get firearms? Oh yeah, that's right. They're just restricting the rest of us and actually having the rest of us be on various federal agencies' radars later on and having their serial numbers of our guns be in backdoor gun registries and gun rosters with places like the FBI, ATF, etc. I know that for a fact because my federal swatting that happened almost 4 years ago proved just that, honestly. And we'll talk about that next week, actually. So, anyway. Let's see. We're not even gonna talk about the bullshit manifesto because it's just them trying to basically pass the buck, is what it is, dude. So, anyway, yeah, it talks about legal proceedings and stuff like that. State charges. So, it was indicted on capital murder charges in Texas grand jury September 12th, 2019. Pled not guilty to capital murder charges at his arraignment on October 10th, 2019, in the El Paso County Courthouse. Mark Stevens, a San Antonio criminal defense attorney, was appointed by the state court to represent this piece of shit, along with defense attorney Joe Spencer. On April 28, 2020, prosecutors announced that they would be seeking a new capital murder charge following the recent death of a 23rd victim after he was spent 9 months in the hospital. Okay, so yeah, that's what it was. It was probably the guy who was brain dead then, if that be the case. The state trial was expected to occur after the federal trial. Proceedings were delayed because of COVID sham and shutdown and stuff like that. El Paso District Attorney Bill Hicks stated that his office intends to pursue the death penalty in the case. Good for you, Bill Hicks. Please let Texas just kill this motherfucker and be done with it, dude. Like I said, he should have died 4 years ago, honestly, at the fucking scene. And if cops had the balls at that point, they would have just smoked his ass right then and there, is what it is, dude. Anyway, let's see. We got aftermath. Funeral individuals said several funeral homes in El Paso and Juarez, Mexico, announced they would provide funeral services for free to the families of the victims as a sign of solidarity with the community. It's at some place in Juarez, Mexico. Chapter organized a vigil in Mexico there. It said they gathered at a park and lit candles and shone flashlights in El Paso's direction as a sign of solidarity. Antonio Bosco declared his wife's funeral on August 16th to be open to anyone who wished to attend it. Hundreds of people from El Paso and other parts of the country attended that funeral, and flowers were sent from around the world. El Paso musician, not sure how to pronounce this guy's name, honestly, Khalid, held a benefit concert at his home city on September 1st, featuring several high-profile artists and introduced by fellow El Paso native and former representative, piece of shit, Beto O'Rourke. And we're going to talk about Beto here in a minute, too, by the way. Before we get to the list of tragedies, I want to call Beto's ass out on this one, dude, because fuck Beto O'Rourke entirely. So, and then talks about tributes and stuff like that, what it is, and reactions, U.S., Mexico, etc., there. So, here's the thing. Since this whole thing happened, you obviously had dipshit Beto try to run for president in 2020. Literally say, hell yes, we're going to take your AR-15, your AK-47, and pretty much end his political career ever again with that statement, as he should have. The guy should be in prison right now for just saying that shit in general, dude, because he was trying to deprive every American of our Constitution right to keep and bear arms, and it was legitimately the fact nobody else was armed that day that this fucking scumbag piece of shit 21-year-old was able to do this shit to begin with, dude. Had anybody in that fucking store been able to be armed and engage this son of a bitch, he would not be alive right now, and they would have been the hero that saved a shitload of fucking people, is what it is. But of course, you got anti-gun douchebags like Beto, Robert Francis O'Rourke, which is what his real name is, sitting there trying to make it all about gun control and dictatorships and everything else like that. So you know what? Fuck you, Beto, you sack of shit, motherfucker. Anyway, going back to the rest of this, though. Actually, I think we're going to go to the... Where are we at? Yeah, we'll go to the People article here, which is has a list of names here that we're going to talk about now. This is obviously the 22 that we know for a fact, and then not sure who the guy was that died 9 months later. That is what it is. So we'll do 22 or 23 at this point. So anyway. Sorry, I was waiting for a sec there because my connection was going unstable. It's good though now. Let's see where we're at. Yeah, so it was a busy Saturday at the Walmart in El Paso, Texas on August 3rd, 2019. Store was filled to capacity during the back-to-school shopping season. Around 10:39 a.m., normality of the day was shattered when a gunman entered and opened fire on shoppers. 23 people were killed in the rampage, including a man who died 9 months later as a result of injuries, and 26 people were injured. So I'm guessing that a couple of the kids were just considered like small injuries or whatever, to the point where they didn't really label them as like part of that 22 initially or whatever. The gunman, now 24, whose name we will not talk about, according to this, wrote a hate-filled manifesto against Latino people and immigrants, blah, blah, blah. Again, it's just I'm trying to pass the buck. The guy was a fucking schizo. Let's say it like it is, dude. He was a fucking schizo. It says, hours after the El Paso shooting on August 4, 2019, a second gunman opened fire on the street with bars and nightclubs in Dayton, Ohio, killing 9 innocent people. Yes, literally 13 hours later is when that happened. So below is a list of those who lost their lives in the El Paso shooting. We had Jordan and Andre Alvandino. Jordan was 25. I believe that was the female here. And then Andre was the dude. He was 24. She was a cute chick, man. I'm not going to lie. So the couple who lived in El Paso area were killed when Jordan shielded their 2-month-old son from gunfire and Andre shielded Jordan. So you had the wife shielding their child and the husband shielding his wife and child, and both were killed. And again, had this man been legally armed, he could have killed the shooter, is what it is. Unfortunately, he was not, and that 2-month-old son of theirs lost both their parents. And so the boy pretty much lived because she gave her life. Jordan's sister told the Associated Press Jordan and Andre were inside the store purchasing school supplies for their 5-year-old. Said Elizabeth Turi, Jordan's aunt, described her niece to NBC as a epitome of love, calling her a selfless mother. Said Jordan's father, Paul, said in an interview on the Today Show that Andre shielded her and she shielded the baby, and that's how he was able to survive this. So according to the Associated Press, Andre had recently started a business in El Paso that built things from granite and stone. He was also recently celebrated their first wedding anniversary together. He had the character and charisma, according to his friend. Said Victoria Sanchez, a friend of the couple, told People they were such a nice couple. She added, could tell they truly loved each other. Well, hopefully they're both in heaven together right now, looking down on their son and other child. Next up, we had Dave Johnson, 63. David Johnson died shielding his wife and 9-year-old granddaughter from bullets. In a social media post, Johnson's niece, Maria Madara, wrote that he had been a loving father, husband, uncle, and grandpa. She hailed his life-saving actions. He was surrounded by 3 gun shells that could have been one for him, my aunt, and my niece. That Maria girl wrote, said he protected them from that murderer and worked as a shield. If he hadn't been there, they would have not made it through that. Next up, we have Javier Amir Rodriguez, 15. Said Javier Rodriguez would have started his sophomore year in high school the month after the shooting. According to a Facebook post by his aunt, Javier loved video games and played soccer. His uncle was shot in the foot trying to protect him from the shooter. Then we had Angie Gillespie, 86. Said Angie was the checkout line. I was in the checkout line at Walmart when the shooting began. Moments before her death, she spoke to her son on the phone. Her granddaughter, Caitlin Hellberg, told People at the time, said, quote, my grandmother was a strong woman. She raised all of her 7 children by herself, often working multiple jobs to support them. She was a woman of faith and is most independent, strong, caring woman I have ever known. Said during a conversation with her son, was said that she was happy, laughing, and missed him because she went on vacation and they were going to see each other soon. She went shopping to Walmart every Saturday morning. So basically, had she not done that as a routine thing, she would have probably survived this massacre. Next up, we had Arturo Benavides, 60, said was an Army veteran and former bus driver for San Metro, El Paso's public transit provider. So an El Paso native, he and his wife, Patricia, never had children of their own, but were foster parents who doted on their many nieces and nephews. Sorry, I was trying to figure out that word was. Said his grandniece, Jacqueline Luna, told People that Arturo was extremely caring, loving, and strong-willed. He enjoyed recounting his time in the Army, telling stories from his time on the battlefield. He loved hearing from us and knowing that we were okay. He loved being around people and would talk to anyone. Next up, we had Elsa Mandura Marquez, 57. Said Elsa was a mother of two from Juarez, Mexico. Was visiting family in El Paso when she stopped into the Walmart to make a quick purchase. The gunfire erupted just minutes after she walked into the store. Quote, I bid farewell to my companion, the most marvelous of women, a person full of light who will continue illuminating our way for the rest of our lives. Her husband wrote in a Facebook post, we are going to miss you, my love. Next up, we had Leonardo Campos. Said Campos, 41, lived in El Paso with his wife, Maribel Laura, who also died in the shooting. He grew up in San Juan, Texas. Always tried to make people forget about their bad days, said his brother David Campos, 26. Can't believe they became a statistic, said Leo's childhood friend Ace. Campos's wife, Maribel, who was also 56 years old. Or actually, he was 41, she was 56. Said Luna, 56, was shopping for school supplies for her grandchildren with her husband, Leo. Couple had just left their dog at the groomer moments before. Her brother told CBS local affiliate the family knew something was wrong when the groomer called to ask why the dog had not been picked up yet. Another relative tracked their car to the store's parking lot using GPS. Juan Velasquez, 77, was with his wife, Nicolaska, I think it's your pronounce your name. When the shooting began, they had just parked their car when the gunman approached. She was in her 60s, was hit in the face, but survived the attack. He died at the scene. Said, quote, so they had already been shot by when my grandma called my mom, and they were just telling us that it hurt where they were shot at, said granddaughter Daisy Fuentes. My mother was just trying to tell her to stay calm, to just breathe, and my grandpa just told my mom to call an ambulance because they weren't coming fast enough. Gloria Irma Marquez, a mother and grandmother, was at the bank inside the Walmart when the shooting began. Her husband, John Orga, said, I called her to tell her to move away from the crazy guy, but she never answered. I'm pretty sure that this was the one whose funeral was open to the public and a bunch of people went to it, is what it was. Maria Eugenia Lagartia Roth, 58, a resident of Chacharicha, Mexico. Roth went to El Paso to pick up her teenage daughter from the airport. While waiting for her daughter's plane, she stopped by the Walmart to pick up a few things. A post on the Facebook page for the migrant ministry of the Archdiocese of that Mexican city stated, just as you have always been in solidarity with migrants, today our entire team embraces you with the same solidarity. Going down the list here, we had Sarah Esther Rigolaldo and Alfredo Churros Honduras. So those two were husband and wife, were from Juarez, Mexico, were both killed in the attack. So the woman's daughter left a loving tribute for her parents on her Facebook page, noting and writing in Spanish, "Don't know how long it will take for my soul to heal. Your deaths leave us with a great vacuum. So grateful I was your daughter." Rest in peace, my beloved parents. Their granddaughter had anything like this. I have never had nothing like this, and my wife and I know she's looking down and smiling. Her husband of 22 years, Tony, told the news affiliate there in San Antonio, adding that she was a good wife. Ivan Filiberto Manzarno, 41, was a Juarez, Mexico native, also known as a hard worker and exceptionally devoted to his wife and two children. A colleague described him as the Washington Post as an exceptionary father who was passionate about his sales and marketing career. It didn't matter what the hour was, he was always in his office or in the field, taking care of his projects. George or Jorge Cavelio Garcia, age 61, was visiting El Paso to see his son, Luis, and his granddaughter, Emily. They were raising money for Emily's soccer team outside Walmart, according to the local affiliate for Fox. Said he was struck with bullets as he shielded the girls. His nephew told the news station. Sad. Maria Flores, 77, and Ruel Flores, 83. So Ruel and Maria Flores retired in El Paso in the 1990s after raising their family in Southern California, according to Washington Post. The couple had been married for 60 years. On the day of the shooting, they were at Walmart purchasing airbeds for visiting relatives. The couple's son met with reporters following the shooting, telling them he had desperately attempted to reach his parents but had no success. Can't contact them on the phone, he told local affiliates, noting that he hadn't heard from them since the day before. Alexander Hoffman, age 66, whose photo is not featured here, was born in Germany but lived in Juarez, Mexico for more than 40 years before being shot at the Walmart. His wife told the Associated Press that he considered himself Mexican and that Mexico was his second home. He was 66 years old. Teresa Sanchez, 82. So according to the GoFundMe page set up by her family, the 82-year-old was a retired biology teacher who had been living in El Paso for the past 30 years. Guillermo Mimo Garcia died nearly 9 months after the shooting. Okay, this is the guy that died after the shooting then. On the day he was shot, Garcia and his wife were selling lemonade to raise money for their children's soccer team. Sad, man. Carry a fucking gun, people. Seriously. Like that's my fucking solution to stuff right now, dude, because it works. Like, this is the kind of crazy shit that's able to happen when nobody is armed to stop it. You have a fucking psychotic lunatic who's able to just walk in, start blasting, and be able to reload multiple times, for God's sakes. Because that was the thing. That motherfucker that committed this shit had like a 30-round mag in the AK, dude. He had to reload at least a couple times to kill and injure that many people. Over 40 plus people were shot. / killed by this asshole. It's just ridiculous, dude. And like I said, the fact that you then had all these leftists come out of the woodwork and try to do gun grabs and everything else like that after the fact, it's like, nah, man, nah. What you need to do is ban the gun-free zones that this should happen in. You need to harden every place across this country. Make it so that these fuckers cannot do these massacres in the future is what it is. Hell, do what they did in Nashville the other day. There was a school in Nashville recently where you had it be a hardened school, and guess what? The guy who was trying to kill a bunch of people in that school got killed by the fucking people that were in the school as resource officers, etc., and then the cops that came very quickly after that. That's how this shit should end with every single one of these, dude. It should be these people being taken to these fucking psychotic mass murderers, these spree killers, we're going to call them at that point. And these people that want to commit these massacres. It should be them trying to commit a massacre and being taken out by everybody almost immediately. Armed citizenry, armed staff, everybody. And we wouldn't have to be doing memorials to these people anymore. You wouldn't have to be remembering dozens of names of people who died in these massacres because of some piece of shit. And that's the sad fact of all of it, man. Everybody just thought they were going in there to do whatever that day, you know, and looking around and being like, what the hell's going to happen next kind of thing. And I remember my personal, things that happened after this. And, obviously Walmart's bullshit response or the Waltner's response there, which is basically, oh, you can't carry in our stores anymore. Oh, so you want to make even more gun-free zones out of your stores than after this, assholes? Nah, bitch. I carried how I fucking wanted to carry then after that. Legally armed at that point. Open carrying most of the time, honestly. Obviously, that was before I had constitutional carry, which now I carry constitutionally everywhere I go. So, but yeah, at the time it was basically open carry everywhere, dude. I remember it was like a few days after that I had to go to Walmart for some stuff, and I was like, nah, I'm gonna open carry like a motherfucker here, dude. I don't give a shit what the fucking staff tries to say to me, because I'm not gonna be a victim, is what it is. And that's the entire point. And I was sitting there, like, legitimately looking everywhere around and stuff like that, making sure that nobody was trying to do anything then. And that's the thing, man. People's situational awareness in this country, especially 4 or 5 years ago, was non-existent. And I think a lot more people, especially in today's day and age, after, 2019 there, after 2020 riots, etc. there, have become hyper vigilant in many cases, start having an actual, square of safety, if you will call it that. That's what I'm going to call it right now for the time being. But yeah, it's like you're vigilant enough to be like looking around, checking where every exit is, checking where, potentially a vulnerability could be or whatever the case be. If something happens, where can you hide for cover for a minute and then engage after the fact and stuff like that. So anyway, I was hoping our friend Cora would be here today for this because he's a Texas native, but unfortunately I think he had other business to take care of is what it is, and that's fine. He's got stuff he's got to do there with his own life, so not really an issue. But yeah, it's a bunch of shit though, man, honestly, to know that like you had pieces of shit like Beto O'Rourke basically try to use this, them literally, it's just like Obama back in the day, by the way, with Sandy Hook and stuff. You have these sick fucking Democrat politicians, dude, that will literally stand on the graves of dead people to further their own fucked up careers, what it is. And it's exactly what O'Rourke did there. He was making all by himself in 2019, 2020 to try to push gun bans, to try to run for the presidency and everything else like that. And rightfully got booted off the fucking stage at that point, man. And that's the thing. It's like you have these people that will call for gun control all the time like that, whether it be, Beto, Biden, whatever the case, it doesn't matter, honestly. State level people across the board here. And yet, who do they expect to actually go and confiscate said firearms? Oh yeah, that's right, police and military. It's like, nah, bitch. You want to sit there and do gun control and confiscate firearms? Be the first one in the fucking stack at the door, motherfucker, and see how well it goes for you. It ain't gonna be too well, honestly. When you're trying to take legal gun or shit away from them, is what it is. You know who does that? Wannabe dictators like Hitler and Stalin and Mao, etc. Pol Pot, Che Guevara, all those people like that, dude. Nicolas Maduro in Brazil. Or not Brazil. Venezuela. Sorry, I was confusing Brazil with Venezuela there because Lula is the guy most recently in Brazil now who, jacked their presidency and is now trying to disarm those people there again. So only the cops and criminals have guns there. So, yeah. And again, what happens when only the cops and criminals have guns in places like the El Paso Walmart in 2019? Oh, yeah, that's right. 23 dead, 22 injured. All because nobody was carrying that day. And like I said earlier, it wasn't just that one guy that was, forgot his gun that day or whatever. There was multiple people there that could have been armed, that were all legal carriers, all had CCWs, etc. Just didn't carry that day. And that's the thing, man. It's going to be that one day where you choose not to carry that you're going to need it the most, honestly. And that's why you should always be carrying. Because again, when seconds matter, police are literally 6 minutes or more away from you. And even then, it could be 10, 15 minutes for that matter before they go in and engage and stuff like that, dude. So you're sitting there for at least 15 minutes taking gunfire and stuff like that potentially and not being able to shoot back and take out the threat to your life and everyone else's lives. So, yeah, very fucking frustrating. I think El Paso for sure is definitely a prime example of exactly why gun-free zones need to be banned in this country. It should have never happened, but that being said, it could have been easily had the threat taken care of had there been people armed that day in that place. But instead, you had Walmart team up with Michael Bloomberg, the biggest anti-gun sack of shit in this entire country, to then go on and ban ammo after the fact. Because, oh my God, we have to ban all the handgun calibers and all the rifle calibers and stuff like that, but yet they'll sit there and still sell hunting rounds, which, by the way, 308/76251 can still be used in an AR platform. It's called AR-10s. Same thing with some of the other rifle calibers they sell there and stuff. So, anyway. It's really just a bunch of shit entirely, man. And like I said, honestly, what it really was is it was just them trying to virtue signal and stuff like that and pulled a Bud Light before Bud Light pulled Bud Light things. But yet Walmart wasn't boycotted into the ground is what it is. The Waltoners didn't lose, tens of billions of dollars is what it was, even though they should have. And such Michael Bloomberg for that matter. So, anyway. Preventable tragedies are preventable for that reason, because you could easily have people armed to stop any would-be gunman from committing a tragedy. And it's really as simple as that. That's about all we got to say about today, though. I'll be back at some point tomorrow for, I think it'll be around the same time, around 3 o'clock or so, give or take, for Freedom Friday. We'll be talking about the Dayton Massacre that took place exactly around 13 hours after El Paso did, and how the piece of shit behind that was taken out the way that you need to take this piece of trash out, dude, which was in a hail of gunfire, honestly. And what they tried to do here since then with Ohio, obviously you've had Democrats at the state level here every single day, basically trying to do gun control every chance they get, even though they should be out of office right now and in jail right now for that stuff. And Democrats are of law, same thing with anybody else that called for gun control after Gilroy or El Paso for that matter. Gavin Newsom should be in prison many, many times over for the shit he did there in California with Gilroy. Any leftist, Beto O'Rourke, etc., that called for gun control after El Paso, same fate for them. They should be in Texas State Prison right now, or someplace else like that is what it is. Hopefully, when this is all said and done, in the coming state trial of that piece of shit that committed the El Paso Massacre, you will have the state of Texas give this motherfucker the most hardcore death penalty possible, honestly. And hopefully justice will finally be served 4.5, 5 years later, maybe more, depending. Because obviously, if they give this, even if they do the trial pretty soon here, they'll give the guy death penalty and stuff like that. You still have to have appeals process, which is absolute bullshit entirely. And eventually, it'll be 5, 10, 15 years down the road probably is when the appeals will be exhausted, and it'll be then 2040 something ish or so when that piece of shit finally does get killed. Then. So anyway, but needless to say, in the years since, you've obviously, like I said before, had Texas now get constitutional carry in 2021. They were actually 21 in 21. Then you had Uvalde happen about a year or so ago now. That was, again, another government-related psyop and stuff like that. Had that be used to push gun control federally and stuff like that. You've had people do calls for gun bans there in Texas. They actually did a committee here, I think, if I'm not mistaken, the last few months is what it was, where they were trying to pass through age restrictions for people to buy firearms now, upping from 18 to 21 across the board. But then you've also had people smack that shit down as well and be like, no, bitch, fuck you. And you've also had now cases with Texas doing suppressors at a state level there that will never leave the state of Texas, and basically calling the ATF's bluff right now, being like, no, we can actually manufacture these and sell them in the state of Texas, what it is, without anybody having to get tax stamps and stuff like that. So, and as far as we're looking at right now, that's probably going to be a Supreme Court case pretty soon that will hopefully go in our favor is what it is. So anyway, that being said, a lot of good has come, a lot of bad has happened, obviously, in the wake of all that and in that tragedy itself, but a lot of good for Second Amendment rights in this country have come out of that as well, for that matter, because it's shown that, again, when you leave places vulnerable, when you have soft targets for more massacres to take place after the fact, people are going to exploit that stuff, and they're going to continue on to do these tragedies, what it is. So it's like, yeah, harden the schools, harden businesses, arm staff, arm teachers, arm everybody, make sure civilians are armed themselves to be their own first responders, and you can have a better society overall, man. An armed society is a polite society. It's as simple as that, honestly. And if you don't have that in place, all you have is a shooting gallery for the next piece of shit that wants to have infamy and go and commit a massacre. And that's exactly why we here at the Ohio Patriot Education Network will not name these fuckers by name anymore, because there's no reason for us to give these sacks of shit infamy. Zero reason at all, man. They should be given the worst name possible. Dickless loser number 1 or 2 or 10 or whatever it is, or, super fucking cunt 14 or whatever it is then. Something like that, man. And that way, if the media did that same exact thing and called them, names like that or whatever, you would have that not be infamous at that point, because you'd have the next person be like, well, I want to be known as that thing with like a number attached to it then. No, that's what it is. It's a bunch of cowards looking for infamy, dude. And as soon as you start shooting back at these pieces of shit, what happens? They cower like the fucking pussies that they are. And in the case of that piece of shit in Gilroy, put a gun to his own head then. In the case of this piece of shit in El Paso, as soon as the cops tried to confront him, he ran like a little bitch boy out the fucking door, got into a vehicle and drove off, and then surrendered later on when he was surrounded by a shitload of cops at that point. And what happened in Dayton? You had that motherfucker run like a little bitch out of the fucking thing is what it is, and he was confronted by the cops and then died in a hail of gunfire is what it was. So, anyway, needless to say, it's time to arm up. It's time for American citizens that can legally be armed to be armed at all times. Make sure that you are the person that could be the good guy with the gun, the Eli Dickin, the Kyle Rittenhouse, etc. That could be that first responder to be able to deal with the situation and defend yourself from that threat and defend others from that threat. And it's really as simple as that. Hope you guys enjoy this episode. I will be back tomorrow for Freedom Friday. We'll be discussing the Dayton Massacre 4th anniversary, and like I said, everything falling out from that here in Ohio. My condolences go out to the families of the dead in El Paso on this 4th anniversary. You know, I know y'all are still missing your families, and I can 100% sympathize with y'all on that. You know, I've lost family as well to various things. You know, thankfully it wasn't tragedies like this, preventable tragedies like this. But I can sympathize with, you know, lost loved ones is what it is. So hopefully y'all are having celebrations of life today. That's all I got to say about that one. And not dwelling on this as a, you know, just day of other things. And hopefully nobody out there is calling for gun control today, because if you are the piece of shit in society that is doing that stuff, dude. You are 100% the problem with society currently, because all you're doing is trying to disarm the good people in this country against the criminals of this nation. And it's really as simple as that, honestly. Hope you guys enjoyed this episode. We will be back next Thursday for another Buckshot Thursday episode. Next Thursdays will be the first that is not a Remembrance of any kind. We will simply be doing our regular scheduled program then with 2A scenarios and stuff like that. Hopefully we will have panelists that day and go and do a few things when it comes to different various things. So anyway, till later. I will see you guys on the next one. Have a good day. And if nothing else, if you have kids, hug your kids today. Hug them especially tight today. Hug your wife, hug your husband, etc., etc. You know, call up your mother, father, aunt, uncle, whatever the case be, whoever your loved ones are and stuff like that, and tell them you love them, because you never know if it's going to be the last time you do. And it's as simple as that. Have a good one. I'll see y'all later.